Hello, everybody. Welcome to the podcast of Peculiar Ventures. Today, we're going to be discussing the topic of science fiction settings in games. I'm here with my co-host, Ali.
Hello, everyone.
I, myself, am Shane, and our guest today is August.
Howdy.
And so, we're going to begin by talking about what are particular games that you absolutely love the science fiction setting for, specifically.
Myself, I would probably say I really do like Halo. Its setting, just in general. Going further back with it, it's really, I like what they established with it. BioShock's another good one. It's really futuristic.
BioShock is a good one.
So what is it that you particularly like about Halo? What are the aspects that you like about that series?
I like how the idea is that humanity isn't really, like, it's centered, I guess, but there's a lot more that happened way before humanity, and a lot of the game is trying to unlock with the information just where they came from to learn what to expect with the next few hundred years. And at the same time, there's a cataclysmic, war going on.
Yeah, there's the galaxy-ending threat.
Yeah.
And then, because I feel like that can be kind of common within science fiction, especially like big space science fiction, where it's straight up, something existed before, and there are remnants of their technology still around, and you need to save the galaxy from cataclysmic events. Especially like where humanity is like in the center, and it's like only this human can save everybody. Mass Effect did that with the Reapers and with I'm trying to remember what the old race in Mass Effect was called. That
Protheans?
Protheans, yeah. There was that, and then Halo does it with Master Chief, and I'm trying to think of something else that has like a galactic like purge but everything. But that's one thing I like to see more in games is where like I like to see humanity as the adversary. I like to see when it centers on like a race of aliens and humanity is like kind of an enemy in a way. And not necessarily all of humanity, but like a good portion of humanity is essentially tyrannical. I mean, I guess didn't StarCraft do that too?
I think so. Yeah, because Minx is kind of a bastard the entire...
Yeah. Well, so there's, there's the good human, which is, Raynor, and then the bad humanity.
Which is the entire
Terran. The entire Terran. And then there's the Protoss, who are mostly pretty much just good alien. And even the Zerg aren't, like, innately evil. They're
just kind of chaotic evil, as far as, like, they don't really align to any particular...
It's weird because it's obviously based entirely on Warhammer. Because pretty much in Warhammer, it's just humanity, the Imperium, terrible. Eldar, essentially space elves became what are the Protoss, and then, the Zerg are very obviously Tyranids.
Yeah.
But Tyranids inside of Warhammer, it's just an all-consuming entity. Like, it doesn't really care about anything.
Close to Gravemind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's along the lines of that's a common trope inside of science fiction.
It makes it easier to have an enemy that way.
Yeah, it's literally just, it don't think, it just eat.
Yeah.
Here comes Galactus.
Yeah.
It eat.
Plus, it's not like a type of narrative trope that you can often pull off in a more realistic setting or even a fantasy setting. Like, you can kind of do it in fantasy, but you don't see it too often. It's usually in the realm of science fiction where you see it more commonly.
I think the fantasy equivalent to it is demons.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of the time, like in Warcraft or in other fantasy settings, it'll just kind of be like, the gates to Demon Land are open. Here come the demons. They're evil because they're evil.
It's just an established thing that they're the bad guy.
They're not usually a hive mind, though. That's the part that I was more honing in.
Yeah, hive mind more so, yeah.
I think that comes from a little bit of the fan, or just the sphere really liking galactic horror as a background genre. It's very popular. I mean, you have the fantasy variant of it in Bloodborne, which is like Eldritch Abominations and stuff like that. But everybody always loves in the sci-fi games when you have this spooky threat, like even in Star Trek, the Borg.
Borg are a bit different. Yeah,
they're an all-consuming hive mind, but they're machine instead of strictly biological.
Yeah, the Borg are interesting. I do like to see. Not hive mind, but more like android-esque things where it's AI. I like to see when AI are made their own unique race that have like a faction and like exist as people, as opposed to like evil AI like Terminator style where it's just like Purge Organic Life kind of thing. Like it's cool to see the Purge Organic Lifestyle thing. The Purge Organic Lifestyle. Yeah, it's cool to see the Purge Organic Life thing, but I like it when you have something like, I guess Destiny does that with the fact that you can play as essentially androids.
Yeah, an exo.
Yeah, and then I like that was a big thing inside of Fallout is that they have the I can't remember what they're called. Synths. The synths. Yeah. So I like to see robotic races. I think that they're pretty cool, but I like it more when they're sentient and pretty much they have what is essentially humanity.
Like the late stage Geth, or my friend actually just finished playing like doing a stream of Nier.
Nier Automata?
Yeah, Nier Automata or Automata.
Automaton, so it would be Automata.
Yeah.
I literally had this conversation earlier with Ellie.
Yeah, I could not pronounce that to save my life.
I've never played Nier.
Really?
It's very good. My game of the year 2017.
I personally, the reason I watched him play it is because he's like, you have to see the storyline, and much to his credit, he was willing to go through the entire game for me on stream. Because I was like, I don't like how it handles. It's just like the controls as a base are just not really good for me, but the storyline for it constantly had me like all over the place. Like,
I just don't like the weird maid outfit thing.
Oh,
I'm just not into the main character's design, and that's just me.
So good.
I love the black androids. They can do whatever now.
Yeah, the main thing I like are the color contrast, because I love the black on the white.
Monochromatic.
You see that throughout the whole game, and it makes sense because they are like manufactured, so they have a couple different models and they converge to those models.
Yeah, it's not any. I don't have any issue with it. It's just not my aesthetic. And I should give the game a chance. I just haven't gotten to it. There's a lot of other things. The only thing I know about that game really is the fact that you can like remove your programming and end the game. You can take your OS and the game just ends.
Yeah.
But that's an interesting one. I also think it's interesting when you have AI get into this whole specific like thought process of almost being more organic than you'd think. Like if AI starts like trying to like eat people or like consume flesh, which is like obviously not going to serve a purpose to the AI because it doesn't need to consume, but like when it becomes so far gone and so unaware of the fact that it's not another organism, that it kind of takes on tendencies of living organisms.
There was an old sci-fi that I think it might be one way or the other, but there's a game that immediately comes to mind with that, which is not so much an individuality thing, but the Quake, the Strogg from Quake.
Yeah.
And then there's also a B-rated movie I actually kind of like called Screamers at one point, which is like they're on this maroon tomb world of a planet, and they have to have these things that cover their heartbeat so these machines don't come from, kind of like the Terminators. Mm-hmm. But the whole idea is because these machines have progressed so far beyond where they're self-replicating and stuff like that, like they own their own factories, mm-hmm. so they can just keep making more, and these things they use humans as like parts. They will, if a human is caught outside and they realize that they know that's what that is, these wild machines will come after them and like devour them basically.
Oh.
Kind of like a cross between machines and the Zerg almost.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I like Halo as a universe. I think it's cool because I like the Covenant. I always feel like I liked late stage Halo where like the elites started working with the humans.
Yeah.
Because it's always more interesting to me when like it's not just humanity versus aliens. It's more interesting to me when it's a mixture of different factions and different species that are all working together.
Threat, yeah.
Yeah, not even necessarily a greater threat. I mean, I like that the Starship Enterprise inside of Star Trek has multiple alien crew members, but a lot of the time it does end up being like, the Borg, we got to deal with the big baddie. I don't necessarily feel the need for a big baddie. I mean, that's one thing I liked about a lot of like the offshoot Star Wars stuff. Whenever you see the Rebels, the thing that made them way more interesting to me than the Empire is just that the fact that the Rebels are like a hodgepodge. Well, first off, they're like guerrilla warfare, and I love the guerrilla warfare tactics. But also, they're a hodgepodge of like multiple different alien races and stuff, all working against the Empire. It's not just we're a bunch of humans fighting evil humans. It's like we're all sorts of races and all sorts of aliens and humans fighting against the Galactic Empire. So I like to see that. And the lore behind a lot of the races inside of Halo is pretty cool. Like the grunts, learning more about them and like how they're not how essentially they're not just a lesser species, a lesser form of elite. They're a whole different other species. Same with like the hunters and the brutes and the jackals and all the different stuff. So the different enemy types being different alien species instead of just being different forms of the same alien is cool.
Yeah, I really liked back when around the time Halo 3 was out, I would spend so much of my time reading the novelizations and like so much times on the wiki for Halo, just reading everything I could about it. Like that world is just really cool to me, and I really like you were saying, I love learning like the structure of like the Covenant troops and how exactly they all like why the species that the grunts make up would even work with the the arbiters and all the elites and everything. I always really like that about Halo, and it's something you don't see. Like I attach to it more in sci-fi because I like just learning the history of this thing that's in the future, but like looking back from that point, if that makes sense. Like I love being in a future setting and looking back in terms of the game's canon, but it's still far ahead of where we are. Yeah. Like I like seeing how they thought this is how the world would develop, because usually they still have like, some kind of humans came from Earth sort of.
Yeah. And I really like when science fiction universes really get into creating like certain things for alien races where they're not just humans but a different color, or they're not just humans with like slight alteration. Like they're not just bipedal creatures that are essentially humans but look different, when they have like very unique cultures that are much their own, and like that's reflected very heavily in like weapons. That's one thing I really liked about Halo, and I like about a lot of sci-fi games, is when they define the weapon so much that you can tell what faction and what race created the weapon when you're using it. Halo always did that, where you could tell what was UNSC and you could tell what was Covenant. And even you could tell what was brute. Yeah. And what was, like, more along the lines of the elites. Which I don't remember what the race of the elites was.
And then in later games, the...
Sankili?
Sankili.
Okay.
Yeah. And in later games, you get into, like, the Foreteller weapons. Or Forerunner.
Forerunner.
Yeah, the
Not Kingdom Hearts. And the Promethean stuff, yeah.
Yeah, and so those weapons... Yeah. And I liked the introduction of those weapons. I thought that was pretty cool. I haven't really played the game much past the 4th installment.
Oh, I've kept up with all of them.
Yeah, well, there's only one game past it.
Well, yeah, I mean,
and Wars
even the anniversary since then. Yeah.
Halo Wars is a prequel. And speaking of Halo Wars, the biggest downfall for that for me was, like, So I understand that, like, StarCraft is the most popular RTS and the most competitive RTS, and there's only 3 factions, but having a plethora of factions has always been a really big deal for me for RTSs, and Halo Wars, the original one, was like, pick one of 2. And I was like, come on, like, you could have made the Brute their own faction, you could have made the Flood their own faction.
Weren't they their own faction? You just couldn't control them?
Yeah. There's actually a mod that just came out that is for...
Player-controlled Flood.
Yeah, player-controlled Flood. It's completely, like, homemade. So.
Yeah, because cool. I know Halo Wars... I've been tempted to download Halo Wars 2 because of Xbox Game Pass, it's on there. But I don't know anybody who plays Halo Wars. I had a friend who used to play the original Halo Wars a bunch online, but... I don't know anybody who plays it frequently at all anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I still play Halo Wars too, but yeah, the part of the topic you were actually talking about earlier with the whole different human races, or not human races, but the human alliances, I guess, in like a greater world for that. They could have put in the innies or insurrectionists from the backstory, because they're in the game. Like whenever you find a human-controlled base that you have to destroy that's bad. That's an insurrectionist base. So you could have played as... And the insurrectionists are just outer colonists that didn't want to fall under the UNSC anymore.
Yeah.
And then the aliens, the Covenant and the Flood attacked them. And they're like, UNSC, die a horrible death. We'll just fight them both. And
That happens. I know that, like... That's one of the most interesting things to me about the Tau inside of Warhammer 40k. Is that the only race that tends to have, like... because humanity has like the Ogryn and the Retlings, which are not aliens, they're mutants. So they're just mutated humans that are like essentially space ogres and space halflings, but they're under the Imperium because they're mutants. Well, I like that the Vespid and the Kroot are like different alien races that are under the umbrella of the Tau, where the Tau have essentially just absorbed them and made them into their military and stuff like that. That's one of the coolest things, because I like to see all of these like different, unique alien races under one banner. I think that's cool to see. But there's so many factions in the game that it's nice to have like one faction that does that, but not have like all of the factions be exclusively divided by what species they are. The Kroot are very interesting, and the Vespid are very interesting. They remind me Vespid remind me of Geonosians from the Star Wars series. They're essentially just space flies. And then the Kroot are like weird avian dinosaur creatures. And they kind of fulfill roles that the Tau do. Just unfortunately, the Tau don't. Sorry, but unfortunately, both of those units kind of suck on the tabletop and aren't very good. But hey, when I'm playing not Total War, when I'm playing Dawn of War, I like to play as the Tau and I get to use those units, and that's fun to use. So. But I like when they dip into fantasy with sci-fi settings. So stuff like Shadowrun, where you have the cyberpunk setting, you have all this technology, but you're also including stuff like the shamans and people who use magic combined with technology. And a lot of sci-fi universes use psionics to replace it. So like, we don't have magic, we have psionics, so like...
Or BioShock with the DNA, the gene manipulation, stuff like that.
Yeah.
The atom.
Yeah, where they're using like a scientific version of magic.
Yeah.
Final Fantasy has that too with Magitech stuff.
Yeah. And that's cool. Like I like to see that, and I've had a lot of fun in the Mass Effect series using characters that use like psionic abilities. And everybody always for a very long time in the Mass Effect series has been like, okay, but can I play as a character who's not human? Can I make the character not human? And in the original series, it made sense to be human because Commander Shepard is like a human commander. But when they moved into Andromeda, I remember they originally were boasting about how you were going to be able to play as an alien. But then they just decided not to let you do that.
Yeah, they really kind of dropped the ball by not letting you play Turians or Quarians.
Yeah, which to be fair, I don't think Quarians weren't even in Andromeda.
Oh yeah, that's right. The Quarian ship got blown up or lost in space. Or whatever it was.
And to be fair, Andromeda is, like one of those games where they had all these things they wanted to do with it, and then they were forced to, like, push out a game that wasn't finished. And
my face is tired.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to threaten you with a gun holding it towards myself.
Yeah, and then I have noodle arms.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember I got Andromeda and I played through a little bit of it, and I was just kind of like, ugh.
Yeah.
And I just didn't finish it.
It was rough.
Yeah.
I just remember T-posing and sliding across the desert sands after my enemies, holding my gun out at my side.
My T-pose threat. Yeah. This is how you...
You gotta show dominance.
Yes, I was going to say...
That's all it was. It was just dominance
This is how you show dominance to your enemies.
The aliens were terrified. They ran.
Yeah, I would fucking run if I saw somebody fucking moving while T-posing at me. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, that would be
literally
terrifying.
Jesus Christ. Like literally like
Christ the Redeemer.
The T-Man cometh.
Oh God.
Something out of SFM right there.
Oh,
That's
no.
terrifying.
Oh God. Oh, that's like when Michael was talking about procedurally generated animations, and that's all I could think of was just like people fucking like SFM floating around and like SFM faces.
You just Fallout New Vegas where his head's just spinning he goes to sit down after the beginning of the game.
Mm-hmm.
There's a glitch that causes his head to just start turning like clockwise.
So how do you like post-apocalyptic science fiction stuff?
Yeah, it's fun if it's done right. In some cases, it's not. Yeah, Fallout's a big name that comes to mind. I mean, it's kind of it didn't really corner the market, but it definitely made it a big thing. Another one that's kind of it's an underrated driving gem, but Mad Max is a pretty good one.
Yeah.
too.
Yeah. Mad Max is. Does Mad Max really get into like high technology science fiction, or is it just kind of post-apocalyptic and that's it?
I think it's just the post-apocalyptic.
Yeah, because a lot of
diesel punky kind of
diesel
stuff.
punk. Yeah, because Fallout gets into the whole thing of like you have energy weapons and you have technology that doesn't exist. Because that's
never changes.
Yeah, that's the whole weird thing of like where they went. What if we take an era and humanity just never got past it? Humanity just maintained to be in this like this.
The 60s were fun, right, guys?
Yeah, this socio-political environment, and they're just like, what if this existed in like the future with robots? And a funny thing, I think like Venture Bros almost kind of did that with their series, because a lot of what Venture Bros references, like that, a lot of that is like when you go back to Doc's father in that series. Doc's father is essentially in that time period, but Doc's father is like creating robots and stuff. So it's if that technology existed in that period, not necessarily if that period was in the future, but if that time period technology was further ahead, because he's making like a space station and everything in that time frame. But I tend to like dystopian post-apocalyptic kind of stuff, and I guess if you're moving on dystopian, then that'd be more like Deus Ex and BioShock in that way, because BioShock isn't really post-apocalyptic because there's not really an apocalyptic event that happened.
Well, I mean, in Infinite, there near the end, there's that the whole like time cataclysm thing that goes on, but I think it's too brief to call it like an apocalypse. I guess
it's
you
also
kind of avert it really fast.
Yeah, it's also like not at the beginning of like you're not post that.
You're
pre that.
If we made a game like after that explored like the ramifications.
Yeah, the ramifications
that would be like a post.
Would Bulletstorm or not Bulletstorm? Well, yeah, Bulletstorm would be a good one. That's a pretty niche title, I guess.
I never played Bulletstorm.
Bulletstorm, for all its gratuitous violence and and intense
that was the point.
Vocal language, it's quite fun. I gotta say,
wasn't that by the Gears developers?
Yeah. To get the Gears of War 3 beta, you actually had to pre-order the game. The old back in the old GameStop midnight opens.
Oh really?
Days. Yeah.
Oh okay.
Yep.
Bulletstorm. Yeah, that was I remember it existing. I never played it.
I think I got it from like either a Humble Bundle or something, or like PlayStation Plus or something. Probably PlayStation Plus, actually, now I think about it.
It was pretty fun. It's definitely just a humanity thing. Like, I don't think there's any established alien races aside, or like sophisticated alien races, because you have all the stuff that's on this this.
You go to planet, there is natural like inhabitants.
Yeah,
of the planet,
like it's
aliens,
an alien world with
living
creatures and stuff surviving.
Flora and fauna and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
But the ships match very closely to what I've known of Warhammer at this point. But it's interesting because like the world that you fall onto, nowhere else is post-apocalyptic. The entire it's got the whole space on lockdown with humanity type thing.
Yeah.
But the planet you fall on was basically just a oopsie world where everyone died.
Yeah.
And they just kind of forgot about it. It was like Ravenholm from Half-Life. They're like, we just don't go there anymore. It's okay.
That flashes me back to the fucking Turok remake where they're like, what if you go to a planet and there's dinosaurs and you crash there? What if it's like Jurassic Park but in space? That's what it was. It was so weird. Where like humanity kind of just finds like weird. That's like the Predator thing almost, where you have like you go to a planet and you don't know of aliens existing other than like natural animals, and then something happens on that planet that fucks you up. That's also what Alien was, wasn't it?
Pretty much, yeah. They weird signal on moon. We go there, and then it's is it aliens? And then it's like yes, it's very clearly aliens.
Yeah, and that's and then you move over to stuff like Doom, where Doom is like, instead of aliens, it's just fucking portal to hell.
Yeah, that definitely. They did a good job of accomplishing both the fiction and sci-fi aspect of things, especially the remake. I think number 3 really kind of tried to plot a course into a storyline, but I think the switch over to horror genre was just a bit of a mess for them.
There's also an example of like where some they were like working on a game and then investors or whatever were like, yeah, but we're the aliens. And they're like, what? And they're like, yeah, put aliens in the game. And they're like, what? That was with Red Faction, where Red Faction for a long time was just like space colonies. And it was like, Guerrilla was a big blown up game of like, oh, cool, you're on Mars, you're on a space colony, you're like guerrilla warfare. And that game was cool. And then the next game was Armageddon, I believe it was called. And that one was like, where they were developing the game, and then people were like, yeah, but we need to put aliens in it. It's a space game. It needs to have aliens. It's like, as much as I said earlier that I like to see all a bunch of alien races and stuff, I don't think that that's necessary for everything, and that's definitely one of those series that really didn't need it.
I think a game that did a really good segue into that, just from what I've seen, I haven't been able to play any of it. I've watched my friends play a little bit, but I think it's I believe it's called Eve.
Yeah, Eve Online.
Yeah, when they did the because they didn't have aliens for a while either, but when they did the first, it was like the introduction into it, where it was just a surprise event and nobody knew what was going on. I think that was a pretty good segue into it.
I wouldn't want to invest myself into Eve Online. Gonna be honest. Like, if you play Eve Online, cool, dude, but I just don't.
Yeah, I heard it's run a lot by money, so I feel like it's a good idea. It's really kind of bogged down in how much money it is.
Let's talk about like mechanics that you really like to see in science fiction games. So a lot of cool like tactical games have shown up in science fiction. You have like the Xcom series, which is turn-based tactical, and then you have stuff like even the earlier Mass Effects were more tactical squad-based, like pause the game, tell your squad mates to do stuff. As it went on, it turned more into like an action third-person shooter. And then you have stuff like Republic Commando, which was like a squad-based shooter for the Star Wars series. So, some of the most famous RTS is StarCraft, which is a science fiction RTS. Right. So, what are like we talked about like gun design, where I like to see guns be different based upon what faction they're from, but I also really like it when they have like very unique designs for guns. So like if we go back to Halo, the Needler is a very unique gun. Yeah. I like the Needler a lot. I think it's a really cool science fiction weapon. And a lot of stuff will like have charge functions or be like, you know, a beam weapon from like the Sentinel beam in Halo to the gun that fucking destroys Titans in Titanfall.
Yeah, the arc shot or something like that.
Yeah, which as they moved it into Apex Legends is now the charge rifle.
Yeah.
What are like some of your favorite gun designs that you've seen inside of science fiction games?
Ooh, that's tough. I'd definitely say that
even just weapon designs too.
Unreal Tournament did some pretty good stuff, I think, because they did a space stuff and everything like that. They were very futuristic, especially like Unreal Tournament 3 for the Xbox or PC or whatever.
Yeah, that was the one where like everything was red.
Yes, everything was red. Very, very red. And you know how you told that they were the enemies? Because they were blue.
Didn't you have like these weird like War of the Worlds walker things you could get into? Yeah, they had a bunch of weird wacky vehicles and shit.
Yeah, that was part of what made it so awesome though, was because they had those crazy off the wall designs. Some things you'd seen from like, you know, popular culture, and other things were like they used to have these weird like skiff almost vehicles.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, they're all terrain or whatever, and they could just plant like these weird little beacons on the ground.
A lot of sci-fi games like to put skiffs in there. Even something like StarCraft has the vulture bikes.
Yeah, yeah.
I definitely like to see cool, like, sci-fi games tend to be some of the games with the best, like, interesting vehicles to control, excluding Mass Effect's fucking rover, because that shit sucked.
Yeah, I heard about that. On the podcast. Yeah. Oh, the memories of the Mako.
Yeah, God, the Mako sucked. But Halo, that was one of the biggest drawing points, was, like, how cool the vehicles were, and I remember loving that in Unreal Tournament 3. The Unreal Tournament I played the most of was, I think, 2? Like, the arena one? Where, like, you had, like... the main character was a dude with, like, an Anubis suit that used a fucking dual-blade weapon.
Oh, okay, yeah.
It was a weird game. I have very vague memories of it.
Unreal Championship?
Yes, Unreal Championship is what I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
So, what's, like, your favorite, like, science fiction weapons that you've come across?
The main ones, like, I don't think of, like... Because a lot of the games I play aren't, like, traditional, like, FPSs. But when I think of, like, fun weaponry in sci-fi games, like, I think of Metroid and a lot of the different beams that Samus has available to her. Like, specifically the Ice Beam. Like, the Ice Beam is something you don't really see used to that effect in other games. And I like it mostly for its mechanical strong points, where it allows you to recontextualize enemies as, like... Now enemies, when you kill them, become platforms, and you can use those to sort of get someplace really early, like if you want to use it for sequence breaking, or even just in the natural course of the game, like there's this big open room and there's no platforms, but there are a bunch of enemies flying in a circle, and you need to use that to get through the room. So I've always liked the Ice Beam. As far as like just a power weapon, I love the Plasma Beam. I love damage or beams that do like piercing damage kind of thing, because most enemies, you know, they get more armor, more health, and something that just sort of cuts right through it. I've always liked. They always have in sci-fi games. You were talking earlier about like vehicle movement in or like vehicles in sci-fi games. Metroid doesn't really have that, but it does have an interesting movement option with Samus's Morph Ball, which is like entirely unique to Metroid.
Yeah, that is a big part of the Metroid series as well.
Yeah, and even when Metroid Prime Hunters had all the different playable characters in Metroid game, they all had their own unique Morph Ball, and I really liked each of theirs, especially Trace's, where he became like the mini like crawler type of thing.
I remember that, yeah.
Like lunge at people. You didn't have like I think you could drop like spike bombs or something, but they weren't the same as Samus's like energy bomb. But you could like deal like close combat damage to someone who was by you.
That was such a cool game that I would like to have seen made into like a bigger project on a more modern set in a more modern console, because like, or even on PC, because it's Nintendo, so it would not be on PC, but
yeah,
on the Switch or something, because it was such a cool idea. But it was on the DS, and like I played the crap out of it, but I don't think it got as much like press as I think it really should have for being like probably the best shooter on the DS.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's a competitive market.
Yeah,
but I do wish that they had, because they probably just put it on the DS one because Retro is so busy making Metroid Prime 2 was I think out at the same time, and they shoehorned the multiplayer into Metroid Prime 2, which I thought was really fun. It was just a pretty generic multiplayer mode. I would have loved to see it actually have different characters.
That reminds me of Mega Man. That makes me think of Mega Man, because that's like a sci-fi game that has always had a lot of its own character. It's very unique visual design, and it feels really cool to get those different things you get from killing bosses.
Oh yeah.
It doesn't necessarily require you to get any of them. Like it's not like
technically you have to get all of them. You just don't have to use.
Yeah, you don't have to use them like you do in Metroid to like get to do areas and stuff like that. But you do have to beat the bosses, and eventually, I would always try and figure out the easiest path for me. I'd be like, I can beat this boss first, and then I get this weapon. It makes it easier to beat these bosses.
Yeah, the weakness path. There are a lot of really good Mega Man weapons. Like, some of my favorites are the Black Hole Bomb.
Yeah.
Which was really interesting in how it would suck up projectiles that you fire at it. And it'll also just be a small AoE, but it would do a lot of damage if it hit an enemy in it. And it would pull some minor enemies, and it had, like, cool gravity gimmicks. They always have the shield weapons, which I'm never too big on, but there are some shield weapons I really like, especially Jewel Man's weapon from Mega Man 9, I believe, featured Jewel Man, where you could sort of send it out as a projectile after. Usually some of them have it, and some of them are just stationary shield weapons. One of my favorites, actually, was Anchor from one of the Mega Man killers from... I remember I played it first in Mega Man 10's DLC, but it was from a Game Boy Mega Man game, if I understand correctly, where his weapon is a shield. So as a projectile comes in, you charge up the move, rather than the normal, like, weapon beam, weapon energy system.
Yeah.
And then when it's charged up, you could fire a pretty big, like, crescent shot, kind of like a Pharaoh shot kind of thing.
So I was just thinking of games where I start playing them, and I kind of, like, don't make the connection that it's, like, a sci-fi game immediately.
Yeah.
I feel like Titanfall kind of falls in that for me, because like when I first see Titanfall, yeah, they have like mechs, but aside from that, I see the aesthetic of it looks like modern military to me. Like it looks very modern with a lot of the designs of stuff, but then when you actually get into the game and you use the weapons and you realize that there's a lot of sci-fi elements within it.
Yeah, there are a few things that just go beyond like what we would actually know with the charge rifle,
Yeah.
the micro missiles and all kinds of crazy stuff.
And I'm trying to think of other games that have done that aren't like blatant sci-fi aesthetic when you immediately see it.
They're kind of like not super far in the future, but like sci-fi in like say a century or so.
Yeah.
I guess one I would kind of ask actually, because I'm not really sure your guys' opinion on this one. But just because it's recent, I guess Gears of War, would you consider that one like because initially it does play off as like, oh, there's monsters and stuff like that, but all the weapons and everything like that are very human, I guess, in the very beginning.
Yeah.
It takes a minute before you finally get to like, in the first game, before you finally see like torque bows and all the crazy stuff.
Because Gears is also very like dirty and grungy, and so like the weapons don't look chic and sleek and high tech. So you don't really make a connection to, like, futuristic technology. You kind of just see a military game, I guess, with like a more monstrous approach to it. But then you see like, you know, the Silverback, which is the mech suit they get into and stuff like that. And then, you know, in Gears 4 they introduced like the DB weapons, which are the way more like futuristic style
this
thing.
Is a Soundwave gun.
Yeah.
And then the Overkill, how it's like a Soundwave that shoots out.
Yeah, the shotgun.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then it's a lot more technology, and there's because of the robots that are all over the DBs, it's a lot more futuristic sci-fi technology thing. XCOM's kind of like that too, where initially in XCOM, at least the humans, you're like, oh, they just have like normal weapons that our military would use, which is supposed to be the idea. It's supposed to be like aliens invade modern day, and so like the tech we have access to is modern day, and then we have scientists vigorously researching to develop alien technology into technology we can use. Yeah. And that's why as you get further into the game, you get more tech that's like more futuristic and more capable of dealing with the aliens.
I always like the reverse engineer alien weaponry sort of trope in like sci-fi universes.
Yeah, because there's always the question that everybody has is like, why can a human use this gun? Like, this gun isn't designed for a human to use it. So, like, if an alien is so different than a human, why can they use this weapon?
They actually, in Halo 1, they pawned it off to story later on, because initially it was gaming. It was the engine itself not being able to support it. Mm. But in the very first Halo, there were a couple weapons that were actually designed that way, like the energy sword and then the fuel rod cannon. Mm-hmm. Both of them were so volatile for human use. Like the energy sword, there was like you'd have to hold it with both hands; it just wouldn't work.
Yeah.
And then the fuel rod cannon was so volatile with radiation, it's like it would kill a human if they fired it. You know.
Well, that's one of the coolest things about me for sci-fi is like a lot of science fiction kind of goes through this development of like humanity. We used swords and melee weapons until we discovered how to use more like accessible ranged weapons, and that became the normal. Where like now in modern day we use guns frequently in combat and stuff like that, and then of course like drone warfare and stuff. But moving forward, defensive technology becomes so powerful. The like shielding technology and like being able to protect yourself from projectiles becomes so powerful that like close quarters melee fighting technology becomes relevant again, because that's the best way to pierce through all those defenses. So you have stuff like in Halo, you have the energy sword, and you have weapons where
like the gravity hammer.
Yeah, where it's literally like you can do really well getting close to people because it kills them faster than you can kill them with a gun.
Right.
And that's always really cool to me, to like almost go back to old technology, but new technology makes old styles of technology more relevant.
You saying that actually reminded me of another game that I didn't think about, because its setting is intentionally supposed to be sort of like anachronistic meets new, but Horizon Zero Dawn, where the setting of like how society and stuff is set up is meant to be evocative of like pre-civilization, like people, but all the technology is new, like, and the enemies are all like robot versions of living animals, and your weaponry is there are old things like a bow and arrow is an old weapon, but it's a mechanical like update to that.
Yeah, that's almost a post-apocalyptic game, isn't it?
It is yeah.
It's the whole thing of like we reached a point where humanity almost entirely eradicates itself, and then there's this like decrepit remnants of old humanity, and then new humanity is like almost a tribal society at this point that's like barely started to reform itself, and it discovers all of old humanity's relics and technology.
But they don't understand it too. There's the knowledge gap of they know this technology is and you can utilize some of it, but they don't know how to like make a new war bow or something.
Well, that is how Mad Max is.
Yeah.
Where Mad Max is essentially like, not only are these people worshipping like diesel and like trucks as gods, but also, and like pulling from old mythoses, but also they don't really fully know how to access this technology and use it. That's one of the funniest things about Adventure Time to me as a series, was as you got into Adventure Time, because you're like, oh, it's like a fantasy thing. And as you got into it, you're like, oh, this is a post-apocalyptic world that exists because nuclear war happened, and nuclear war like cracked open the planet and released magic. And it's like, that's such a weird but interesting premise, especially for a children's show.
I love when things have that as their backstory, because that's also the backstory to Splatoon. Because Splatoon's backstory is that it's actually post-apocalyptic, and all the humans died, and all the aquatic life form took the land, and they developed into sort of human forms and modeled themselves after the old human.
I didn't actually know that's how Splatoon was.
Yeah, it's never said in game, but if you read the art books and stuff, they tell you. But you can sort of analyze the stuff that's in the game and realize wow, this is
they're emulating some ancient culture that they just kind of grew into.
Splat Kid, he does.
And even because the judge for all the games in Splatoon is the cat, which was the one cat in human society that was made immortal. And so that cat judges all the rest of the Squid Games from now on.
Oh god.
That's in
really
the
that's
lore to Splatoon 1, yeah.
Nice.
I was actually just trying to think of for the previous topic, right before the Splatoon comment. Crisis. Crisis is a good title that kind of encompasses what we were talking about and what you were talking about too. The whole adopting the alien tech as they kind of move into it, and it's not human tech. It's because in the first game, it's almost entirely human on human with these aliens, they have technology, and here's the nano suit, and then you fight the Ceph a couple times, and then in the second one, it's oh no, the Cephs they're really bad, and you're fighting humanity and the Ceph. And then you start picking up Ceph guns, and the suit's hey, let me just check that out really fast, and we'll see what we can learn from it. And then by number 3, you're just hijacking Ceph armatures, you're using guns. It's crazy. And then at the end of it, you're basically an alien life form. So it kind of goes through all the motions there.
Well, a game that takes futuristic tech and is very interesting, Portal.
Yeah,
Portal is
Portal. Oh, great!
Yeah, Portal's a great puzzle game that's literally just all of this futuristic tech where you're essentially in a lab that's been abandoned.
Yeah,
it's in the Half-Life world.
So it was a Black Mesa lab, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Oh no, Aperture was a competitor to Black Mesa. Yeah.
Yeah, they were in the mid. I think it was just the Midwest, and Black Mesa was all the way in the desert. So
yeah, and using all of the tech that you get to use inside of Portal is really cool. And the idea of being in something that's abandoned or empty makes me think of how do you how science fiction, specifically futuristic science fiction settings are used for horror, Dead Space.
Yeah. Oh, it's one of my favorites actually. Dead Space is done. I think that Dead Space did a great job in accomplishing all the different aspects of body horror, and then the futuristic setting horror of just making you feel solitary and alone. Because I feel that kind of harkens back to a lot of the different, just even with the post-apocalyptic setting of Mad Max and all that, you feel really isolated, and it's that isolation
and the inherent dread
that comes along with it.
There's even details if you're low on oxygen, Isaac's breathing changes to go with it, and so you feel that
it's very immersive.
Everything is fucking silent except for your fucking deep breathing.
Yeah.
So and Isaac is he's a pretty good protagonist definitely for the first game. And Dead Space as a series, I mean, it was created literally because they're what if we did Resident Evil 4 in space? They didn't hide it. They literally admitted to that.
Yeah.
And it's okay, that's cool, and it was cool. I didn't play the second one. I heard pretty positive stuff about it. Third one's the one everybody hated, but
I liked all of them just because I was already sucked into the story by that point. But one of my favorite mechanics in that game, which is just, it was really well done, was I mean, like you said, Resident Evil 4 already did with the laser pointer and stuff on the end of a gun for the aiming reticule. But the tracking system where he puts his hand out and it shows you this way to the store, this way back to a bench. And the thing is that's the path you have to take. But on your first run through, you have no idea what lies between you and that save point.
Yeah.
It is all up in the air whether or not you're going to make it there or not.
Yeah. Did either of you play Alien Isolation?
I watched a little bit of gameplay, but no, I didn't play it.
Okay, because that's a different type of thing where you don't really utilize weapons. You just try not to die. It's just it's a lot more of that's a lot more of a focus on just straight up the horror aspect of it, and I think that can be really cool. I mean, obviously, it's just trying to capture the idea of being in the Alien films, being a person in this ship with this threat that you can't see that's looming around you, and I think science fiction can be a really good setting for that. Crackdown's another weird sci-fi game that's is that what, does that take place? It's in the future, right? It's not supposed to be modern.
I'm pretty sure, it's like a Judge Dredd type future.
Yeah. Judge Dredd is so weird to me too, because Judge Dredd is like, it's very modern in the setting, but then obviously it's supposed to just be a dystopian future, where they have. But does Judge Dredd ever really use technology? Like, there's robotics technology, and there's like futuristic technology of like communication, but are the weapons used really technically advanced?
Oh yeah. Actually, the Peacekeeper, I think is what it's called, the Peacekeeper pistol or like auto pistol. It's super advanced. It's like the Doom movies variant of like when you pick it up, it registers your DNA, and then you can command it to do different types of shots, like now explosive shot.
Yeah,
it's crazy. Yeah,
different weapon types.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and that was an interesting thing with BioShock, of the idea of like, you just keep on shifting your fucking weird drug usage to
employ drug usage to change your DNA so that way you can better fight the task at hand.
Yeah, it's funny to see like healing technologies in the future where you have something that's like, you just hold this spray gun at your arm for a little bit and then hey, you're all good. Or anything from just like, it's a med kit. How does it work? You pick it up, use it.
Just pick it up.
Just pick it up.
Eat
it's
the
used.
kit whole.
Yeah, it's interesting to. Have you ever played a game that tries to like emphasize a more detail on how you're healing yourself? I know that Far Cry 2, when I played that game, it would be like when you were healing yourself, you'd like break your fucking hand back into place.
Yeah.
Or you would fucking like remove shrapnel from your arm and different things like that. And that was interesting to me. Game wasn't really, Far Cry wasn't really supposed to be futuristic in any way.
Yeah, I can't think of an example from like a sci-fi game. Like, cause I can think of like Metal Gear having to like stitch yourself back up and stuff. Mm-hmm. But that's not, Metal Gear's not, at least not, those Metal Gears aren't sci-fi.
Yeah.
I can name one directly that comes to mind, but people probably hate me for it. Halo 5, when you go down, like you're in a team or whatever, to revive your friends, it's the classic run over and press X button. Mm-hmm. But the idea is that an animation plays that I think was a really nice touch. It kind of pulled it from the Gears of War of just get up, stop bleeding.
Well, because Gears is instant too. Gears is just like touch.
You're better.
Yeah,
give you the good touch.
Yeah.
What is the animation in Halo?
But in number 5, the animation, you actually run up to them, lift your forearm, check your data pad, do a couple things, and a little loadout of them shows up on your hand, and you basically just drag it down, it all goes green, and you see their shields recharge, and then they start to stand up like, oh, thanks for that,
Yeah, so kind of like the Apex Legends thing, where they're like, when you're rezzing somebody in Apex Legends, you get on your knees and you're like fucking stabbing them with like
hypodermic needle.
Yeah, hypodermic needle and getting in there. Yeah. I did think that it was funny that inside of Gears 3, the if you're playing with Kat, the Spartan.
Yeah.
She'll just feel like if she's downed and she needs rezzing, I think she'll yell, I'm out of biofoam. Like just like stuff like that. Where she has like that detail of a reference to more science fiction style usage of like healing implements of, the idea of biofoam, where you just fill up your fucking wound with this fucking foam so you're not bleeding to death.
Yeah, it was a cinematic, but definitely I think I think you're directly referencing it, but the whole ODST thing where that one guy, Mike or Mickey, got hit with the gravity hammer blade, protected himself with a sniper rifle. I don't know if you remember.
Yeah, I do remember that because that was my favorite character.
Yeah. And then he gets hit with the gravity hammer blade, and they're like, "Oh, he's got a collapsed lung, a few broken bones, and it's like, his heart's bleeding." They're like, "All right, shove the biofoam in." Oh, he's no better. He'll be okay.
Well, they carry him away. Like it's not like he fucking gets up and leaves.
No, but I mean, the moment they do it, it's nice deep breath, and then he's like, "Oh wow, this just really hurts. I'm gonna limp around. You guys carry me."
Yeah.
But it's still a cinematic, but at the same point in time, it employs the whole.
Yeah, and I've talked before about how I really like it when like the animations that are included with weapons really like emphasize this specific unique weapon. Something like an energy weapon, like releasing a it's like a vapor coming out of it to fumigate it.
Overheated.
Or it's overheated or something like that. And Halo's always done that with its weapons. And then something like when you start up a weapon, you like set the clip in there or something, and like you hear like a charge and like a noise that references that.
One of my favorites is the Metroid Prime 1. Actually, all the Metroids do it. When you charge a beam, each different beam has a different sort of effect that happens to sort of signify, like, holding the energy in place there. It's pretty generic on a normal power beam where you just sort of see a lot of particles going into it. But on the ice beam, the tip of Samus's arm cannon frosts over. And the wave beam, because it's an electricity-based beam, you get the electricity crackles all over the arm cannon. And my favorite one is the Annihilator beam in Metroid Prime 2, because that game's gimmick was there was a light beam and a dark beam, and the Annihilator beam combines the two. And you see, while you charge it across the arm cannon, from one side you see the light particles going in, on the other side you see the dark particles coming in. You're just kind of like holding a mini black hole in front of your arm cannon.
What's the weirdest sci-fi universe that you can think of that you've like really that you can think of right now that you just kind of like you never really explored it too much but you just remember it? Because for me, it's probably the Bomberman universe. Like Bomberman had this weird, it was like a very 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 much there's like a princess. And so it's like a monarchy system, I guess.
Yeah.
And like there's a lot of areas that you go to in the Bomberman games that are very much like European-inspired castle monarchy style thing. But then the game is very obviously like sci-fi. Because there's like characters with jetpacks that like fly between places. And like especially with the Bomberman like N64 games where they kind of explored the worlds a little bit more. It's this weird sci-fi universe that was like, it was just, the only way I can explain it is just like space monarchy. I don't know. So
Ratchet and Clank.
Oh shit! Yeah, that's such a weird sci-fi universe.
That one is so all over the place. I don't even know where to begin with that one.
Because that one also like has the superhero trope.
Yeah.
Where you have like a space superhero.
Yeah.
And that's a significant character in the story. And then there's like a bunch of robots and stuff. I don't...
And the government system is very obscure, and it's just... Yeah, it really kind of runs all over the place.
It's more of like a background dressing for whatever the fuck they want to put in the game.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and there's a lot of sci-fi universes that can feel that way. Can you think of anything that's like pretty ridiculous?
Ratchet and Clank was a really good example. I'm trying to think of like other ones from around that like time frame, because I feel like a lot of them happen in like that sort of generation of like gaming.
Yeah, the more like wacky universes that exist.
Yeah, like I'm trying to remember because my mind immediately went to like Jack and Daxter after, and I don't know if that ever got like real sci-fi. I only played the first one, which was more like fantasy-ish kind of with some like technology themes.
Jack 3 got really sci-fi, like hovercraft.
That's what I thought. Yeah, I remember seeing the the bike and stuff.
I actually can't think of anything right now. You got me with the Jack and Dexter,
so
and then
one
Donkey Kong 64.
That's my favorite. One sci-fi universe that's been very interesting to me to kind of explore and look into is Endless Legend, where the whole plot of that entire game is like there was an ancient alien race that used this planet as almost like just a biome. They just kind of used it to develop tech and like they just experimented on it. And then they they pretty much eradicated themselves out of the universe. So what's left is just like the remnants of species they created on the planet. So you're fighting to be like the first faction to get off of it, I guess. It's interesting because the human faction on that is actually a starship that crashed on the planet. And this is like 1,000 years later, where generations after generations have like built up a society on the planet. So they visually look like space marines, but then they use like crossbows. Like their weapons are super low technology, and they're trying to advance their technology to the point that they were when they got to the planet. And then so it's like fantasy in the aspect that a lot of the tech is very low tech, but the actual setting is very sci-fi.
Yeah.
So it's a really interesting world. But my favorite faction inside of the game is actually the original human faction was like they lived in essentially fallout shelters, and they sent people out to try and see how they could survive on the outside. When that didn't work out, they were like, oh, well, sorry, and then they shut the door on them and left them out there. And those people developed and created a new offshoot human faction that is essentially just like chameleonoid humans. Like they don't have physical features of reptiles, but they're like their general hue is like significantly darker. They can blend into environments really easily, and they're like the stealth faction that like steals shit and does espionage.
Khajiit has wares.
Yeah, and so I think that that's really cool that they essentially created an alternative human faction that's like not quite human, and it's really cool to see that for me, where you have alternate versions of stuff, like you take tropes or you take races and you deviate them.
Yeah.
And that's why I like to see, because, again, I went over, like, I like to see the almost, like, very human AI that exists within sci-fi as opposed to the traditional AI of, like, having no sentience and just being like, I must eradicate all organic life kind of thing.
I think you'll see that more, especially as nowadays AI is growing a lot, and a lot of people who, like, make AIs are, like, getting into more, like, writing roles and stuff, because, like, AI, like, as a concept isn't anything like the, you know, destroy all biological life thing.
Yeah.
They sort of develop very organically in similar ways. Like, I really want to see an AI focused, like, faction in, like, a sci-fi game that really focuses on, like, how they look each iteration and how they develop, like, iteratively, rather than, like, because most factions in most games stay pretty static. I would like to see one that, like, say over the course of a game, if you keep on checking in on this AI faction and they change very drastically because of, like, assaults that they've experienced and stuff.
What's a sci-fi setting that you absolutely hate? That you just hate it?
I hate?
Yeah. Is there anything that you guys can think of that you just hate the science fiction setting?
I don't want to garner all the hate that I know that you guys probably will throw my way, but
What?
I'm not a Borderlands fan.
Oh, I don't like Borderlands that much.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I'm not even a big
But
Borderlands.
Borderlands is rough. Just because I'm really into Mad Max, so I look at it and I'm like, this seems like it would be a good idea, or I just look at it and I'm like,
for me, Borderlands' setting is background dressing. Like it's never been something I really felt particularly attached to, because I remember the original Borderlands trailer. I don't know if you ever saw the first one. Was not stylized. It was very realistic looking. And so, like, the original visual design of the game didn't look like it was going to be anything like how they eventually had done. When I originally saw that, I was much more interested in it when it looked more like Mad Max, but on a space planet. Because essentially you go to space and there's a desert planet. When I actually got into Borderlands, it was wacky and something cartoony, so, like, I didn't really care about the setting. Like, I played the first one, I played the second one, I thought they were pretty fun with friends, but I never really cared that much about the story, I never really cared that much about too much of the game. I never felt like any of the guns were, like, super awesome, and I really wanted to see them repeated in other games or anything like that. It was just a schlock fest that I played with friends to have a good time for a little while. And that's still what it is to me. So I haven't bought Borderlands 3. I didn't play the pre-sequel, so it's one of those things where the setting isn't appealing to me, but I don't hate it. It's just there.
Yeah, I can't get behind it. I don't know what it is. There's just some kind of weird vibe when it comes to the actual, like, just the way that they did the layout for the planet and just.
I mean, yeah, you do you. That's
yeah.
Sometimes that's how it is. I guess I don't really like the Crackdown setting that much.
Oh. I didn't even think that one was on the table.
That's
not fair.
Yeah, I guess that game isn't, like, super well received. I only got 3 games. I didn't really play it. It just kind of felt like, what if we made GTA, but you're a Mad Max cop? And I was like, okay.
I feel like they just kind of gave a group of people in the development area money for a project and went, go play.
Make something.
Go make something, and they're like, Crackdown.
What's an interesting one for me, so Breath of the Wild kind of gets that ancient technology with, like, almost there are little sci-fi elements in Breath of the Wild. There's a lot of, like, technology element to that game.
A little bit, and yeah, I think from I don't know if there's an official timeline placement for it yet, but I remember from people's speculation it is the furthest thing in the timeline, so it would be, you know, getting to the point when... And Hyrule's definitely more technically advanced than you ever see it. And it really seems more evidence of, like, technology rather than magic. Like, knowing Zelda's probably some sort of hybrid system, but I really like those designs in particular, that of the Guardians and the Divine Beasts. And the shrines in particular. The shrines are like my favorite, not just for, you know, the gameplay in the shrines, but just sort of they have a very weird, like, ethereal look. Like, they all have a sort of really clean, blue-gray, like, kind of design. The music has, like, a lot of synths, which is very weird for that game, because it's mostly, you know, orchestrated soundtrack. And I really like that. It really gives you a sort of different feel. And sort of the fact that you always get into them from, like, an elevator in, like, a pretty traditional-looking, like, shrine on the overworld.
Yeah.
Like an abstract type of aesthetic, I suppose, compared to the rest of it.
It really lets the imagination sort of, like, go wild of, like, what... And, like, we know it's Sheikah technology is what, like, powers everything, but it's just really interesting how much that has changed from, like, you know, the last time we seen the Sheikah in, like, a period of time, and...
I'm trying to think of another series that has, like, moved into higher amounts of technology over time.
Oh, actually, now I think of it, the Tower of the Gods in Legend of Zelda Wind Waker is similar, where that area is randomly very technologically advanced.
Yeah.
And it's funny to be a place, you know, focused on, like, the gods, so you'd think it'd be a lot older, but all the designs in it are super mechanical, super, like, I mostly think of the boss, Godin, which has a very techno-themed, like, music track that plays, and he has a very, like, electronic design about him.
When you brought up the gods and technology, all it made me think of was Too Human, and I was like, oh yeah, that game existed. That was that weird game that was like, what if Norse mythology, but robots? And then you're like, okay, and then you played it and you're like, oh, this game sucks. The gameplay was just terrible. I played the demo and I thought it was garbage. It was like they were trying to do Devil May Cry, but bad.
It's very easy to mess up Devil May Cry if you're not
because it was like, my least favorite part of the whole game was the fact that they're like, alright, how do I shoot my guns? Push a joystick in the direction you want to shoot your gun. I'm like, what the fuck?
Wait, so it's a twin stick shooter style control?
Yeah, it was. I was like, what? Why would you do this?
Wait, is it an FPS or is it like a twin stick?
It's a third-person action game. It's a third-person action game, but you point your joystick in the direction you want the character to shoot the guns. It was bad.
It's like a weird roguelike-y. Like,
it was part one of a non-existent several-part series. Yeah, it was part one, and it ended with part one.
It was built up to be
like Xbox 360.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was on anything else.
It was built up to be a pretty big series. And
and then it failed.
So
and
bad.
It fucking shit its pants.
Oh yeah, right on launch.
Because there was another game I was excited for that was all about, like, you could manipulate the environment.
Yeah.
It was like a sci-fi third-person shooter where you could, like, raise the terrain and lower the terrain and destroy the terrain and all that kind of stuff. And I don't even remember what it was called. But there's a lot of those
Minecraft.
games.
I mean, Minecraft has gotten a lot more technologically advanced.
Have you heard about this new series that's coming out? You might not have. It's called Minecraft.
It's getting a second game, Minecraft Dungeons, or I don't remember what it's called.
What, like story mode?
No, it's like a Diablo-style game in the Minecraft universe. They're expanding the Minecraft universe.
I can't wait for the Minecraft film series. I can't wait to get the expanded Minecraft universe.
I'm surprised there was no Minecraft reference in Wreck-It Ralph. Well, I guess I haven't seen the second one. Maybe there was one.
I haven't seen the second
one.
one.
You know how he's like breaking the entire internet?
Yeah.
That's basically... that's it.
Yeah, but when does he go to Rule 34?
Oh, no thanks.
That's when it's no longer a Disney movie.
But they have a variant of that with like a little yellow logo on the lower right.
Yeah, it's called Wreck Me Ralph. Yeah, but God, yeah, I liked. I can't really think of too many guns in the Mass Effect series that I was super attached to the weapon, but I did like a lot of the psionic powers. My favorite my favorite class that I played throughout pretty much all of the second and third game, as soon as they added it, was just the Vanguard, because it was like, oh, you mean I can have a shotgun and teleport? I can teleport into somebody and then shotgun them in the face all the time, whole game.
Seems pretty good.
That's just what I did.
There's one that actually comes to mind. Well, actually, two. With Mass Effect 2 specifically, but it loses points because it was a pre-order only.
Oh.
And it was one of those ones that never got put into the game, if I remember properly.
Yeah.
And unless it was like until 3's Complete Edition came out. But it was the 0-point generator or something like that that you got with the... I don't remember the area that they were in, what the part of the galaxy was called.
Yeah.
That was the armor. but it was much like, you might be able to like this one too, it was a black hole generator.
Oh, yeah.
That as you charge it, you can see all these crazy particle effects, and the screen in front of you where the gun's at starts to warp and everything.
Yeah.
And then it fires it out, and it's kind of like the Doom's BFG, where it just latches onto enemies and then pulls them in and they go ragdoll.
If we're going to talk about something that didn't make it into the game that I was in love with, we can talk about the Herc from the StarCraft series. StarCraft 2 is going to have the Herc added. I think it was in one of their DLCs. And it was essentially a Terran unit where it had a grappling hook. So it could grapple up to something, and it was like a close-range shotgun unit. So the whole point of it was that it reminds me of Clockwork from Dota 2. You just hook into somebody from a long distance, and then you can take them out up close. Well, I think there was too many problems with balancing the unit, so they just didn't put it in the game. And the only way it made it into the game was if you bought Tychus for co-op commanders. One of the units inside of his co-op commander group is a Herc. And I was just like, so sick, because I loved the idea of the unit. It was so cool to me, but they just didn't put it in the game.
It's like Scorpion with a shotgun. Get over here!
No, because Scorpion brings you to him.
Oh, they go to the
it's a grappling hook.
Okay, I thought it was like you pull them and you have the shotgun. It's actually like I'm going to launch myself.
No, it's not Roadhog.
Speed of sound.
Yeah, it's not the Roadhog design.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's even crazier. That's
yeah. And that's a sci-fi universe that's kind of interesting, as the Overwatch one, where you have it's science fiction, but a lot of the things don't necessarily feel too super sci-fi or super crazy.
Yeah, like it looks at face value when you're just like, oh, these people have like, oh, this guy has robotic implants or something like that, or it's like you can accept the whole this guy's got a machine arm or something, and be like, it could still be like a modern thing.
Yeah, because
it's when you get this the robot ninjas is where it's really like...
well, because you have stuff where it's like, a lot of the weapons don't necessarily reflect that it's a futuristic setting. Because, like, even Soldier 76's weapon is still just an assault rifle, even if it's a pulse rifle.
Yeah.
It's still just an assault rifle. And then, like, Reaper has shotguns. You have a sniper rifle that's like a normal sniper rifle. Even Tracer's SMGs are SMGs. Like, not a lot of the guns feel super sci-fi-y. It's really more of the setting that is. And then, but then you have guns that do feel more sci-fi, like Zarya's weapon, which is like the beam, and then like the mortar that you launch, and then obviously the graviton surge. And you have like a couple characters who have a lot more of a sci-fi-esque
Mercy, I think, is like
feeling.
Very sci-fi healing, like sort of stuff, like just healing you with like the beam and stuff. And
I played too much TF2 to feel that way because Medic already has a heal beam.
It's just been modernized. It's done so much, but
and it's even Lucio's like Soundwave gun doesn't feel super futuristic to me. But that's probably because whenever I play Lucio, all I think of is Jet Set Radio.
Yeah.
So it's so many elements from so many different places that the world doesn't have that like cohesive, high-tech, futuristic feeling.
It sort of feels more like when you're looking at Overwatch like a Disney thing. And I'm not sure if you'd look at most Disney things and recognize immediately that it's like, this is actually like hard sci-fi.
Yeah, hard science fiction kind of stuff, yeah.
Yeah, so, it's like when you're done with the video or the film, is when you establish, was that strictly fantasy, was that sci-fi, was it a mixture of the two?
Yeah. And so, like, defensively, shielding systems also give me kind of like the sci-fi feeling when I have like a shielding system. And Overwatch has shields on some characters, but it's not super apparent. I guess one character, Symmetra, is a very sci-fi character. Because you have like a beam weapon, and then you have those laser turrets that you send out in a teleporter, so it feels a little bit more science fiction. I mean, even TF2 is science fiction to a very, very small extent, with, having the teleporter for the engineer and stuff.
Sombra is very sci-fi, like sci-fi hacking sort of, that sort of motif of like utilizing the sci-fi elements to like, break into them and use them.
Sombra immediately. You're talking about just click. I'm in. Yeah.
Did you want to grab your instant heal med kit? Too bad.
Yeah.
Just like how every single
I've already disabled it.
Every single game I play of Apex Legends where you play as the new character Crypto, everybody's just like, come here, Hackerman. Just like, come on, Hackerman.
Come here, Rami Malek.
Yeah, but Sombra feels more cyberpunk with her design, which that's obviously the inspiration for her design, but
I feel like there's a lot of overlap that you could classify one as like.
There's a lot of inspiration from like different things that go into Overwatch. It is an amalgamation of multiple inspirations.
Yeah, like Roadhog and
Mad Max.
Junkrat or Mad Max.
Yeah, the Australia is just Mad Max land inside of that game.
Yep.
Yeah, and then McCree is just really weird spaghetti western, but in the future thing, where it's like his gun looks sci-fi when you look at the gun, but then it's just a revolver.
Yeah.
So you're like, okay.
That gets into a trope I like a lot, and I see it used in some different genres. Is like the Swiss Army revolver that just sort of does everything and can like modify itself to like different weapon types, or like I mostly thought of the Evolver from a game I played recently, the Somnium Files, which it looked like a normal like revolver, but it could load like so many different like non-standard ammunition types, like ballist or like a sort of shrapnel bomb kind of ammo, or like pyro ammo.
Yeah, that's the futuristic idea of like the multi-ammo types, where you can switch instead of switching your weapon, you just switch the ammo your weapon uses, and it changes entirely the functionality.
The super modular weapons, which I would like to see explored more in the context of like shooting games, because most shooting games are like you need to pick up an entirely different gun. It'd be nice to have like a single modifiable gun that maybe like across the world different parts are scattered and you can like assemble them into different guns.
Yeah, because that was one thing while playing Indivisible, is that it reminds me of like worlds that are essentially this weird idea where they're like, what if we had a fantasy world, but also a section of that world is technology focused. So you go to a section of the world and all of the technology is like almost to modern day standards, but then the rest, or like even science fiction standards, but then the rest of the world is like normal fiction, like normal fantasy
sort of settings.
Yeah, so like I know a lot of stuff will do that. Like, a lot of fantasy will have like the steampunk elements of it. Like Dota has Gyrocopter, who's literally flying around in a little plane, and Sniper, who's literally has a sniper rifle as his weapon. But it mostly sticks to that like almost fantasy, higher technology, but not modern day tech kind of thing, where they like throw it together and it kind of works. But then you have something like Indivisible, where you go to certain parts of Indivisible and there's like a straight up characters that like you go to Tykrong and it's literally like there's neon signs here, like this is just modern day.
The difference in going from like the first, second, and third areas is like pretty jarring. Which works for some environments. Like sometimes that contrast is really good.
I was thinking of Latigo when you mentioned like a revolver that does other things. Yeah, he just has the revolver that also is a sword. It's also his cane. He has like a cane revolver sword.
Triple threat.
And he was a really fun character to use.
If you're talking about everything's a gun, Ruby, where you have a normal weapon and everything is also a gun.
My punch gauntlets are guns. Yeah. That was the whole thing. Is the switch weapon style thing was a big part of that entire series' aesthetic, which was kind of interesting.
Yeah,
and League of Legends is another universe that kind of just decided, we're gonna have multiple cities that are super high technology, and there's characters who have fucking laser guns.
Or like time control,
machines. Time machines and like, oh hey, we decided we wanted to make Harley Quinn a character, so here's our character who has a Gatling gun / rocket launcher / like zap cannon. But also this is the same
minigun.
Also, this is the same universe where one of our big characters is just a dude with a big sword, and this guy's a dude with a big axe. So it's like this weird.
You need to suspend your disbelief, sort of. To, like, think that these two could compete on like an even
playing field, and you have to cohesively. And then it's weird because they don't even commit to it sometimes.
Yeah.
Because it's like, oh hey, this person has fucking rocket launchers and Gatling guns, and then it's like, but this guy, he hunts zombies with light guns. They don't shoot lasers. They shoot magic light. It's magic, and you're like, why can't it? This person shoots bullets. Why does this person have to shoot magic bullets? I don't understand.
Yeah.
It's just weird.
The balance of power in that game is very suspended. I mean, Aurelian's soul is a star dragon, so...
Well, yeah, that's like the idea of like a deitary character. I mean, even in Dota, like, Zeus is a god who just fights. He gives up his immortality for Dota, quote-unquote. He says it in the game. because that game has fucking great voice work done for it. I love the random quotes that everybody has. When he dies, it's just, I gave up immortality for this? But...
he just wants to play fair. He wants to have a fun time.
Yeah, but like...
He's just there to have a good time.
Again, you have characters where it's like a dude, like a bear with big claws versus literally a dude in a fucking jet that's just like got a little rocket he shoots at people and shoots guns at people, and you're just like, sure.
It's very hard to sort of like craft a world and a game that makes these sort of inaccurate, or like these sort of very disparate parts mesh together, and some things do it well, some things don't.
Especially with any like RPG, you're gonna have that where like you have the characters that just use sword, and then you have the character that's like, this is my big cannon. It's just like
just compare the starting party of like Final Fantasy VII, like Cloud, big sword, Barrett, my arm is a gun, and then Tifa, I punch things.
That definitely goes back to Nier as well, because they're all using, this is my space katana, and then this is also my space hammer. And I don't actually wield them like space weapons, like actual melee weapons. No, my robot over my shoulder projects them in front of me, and I throw them out at people, and then they just spin around a bunch of times.
That just makes me think of the like classic Warhammer 40k meme that goes around where it's just the commissar in the tank with his sword, and it's just, bring me closer so I might slice them with my sword. Just the obvious like weirdness of melee weapons being so prominent and relevant in a game where there's fucking tanks and guns. And even Cyberpunk and Shadowrun specifically gets into that, where you have street samurais. And like, street samurai is a class you can play in that universe, but then you also have people that just use guns. And then you have like people who hack robots to fight for them and stuff like that. I've always wanted to do a campaign of Shadowrun. I just haven't gotten a group together to really do it.
Yeah, it sounds really cool.
It does look pretty fun. My friend told me about a number of times where it's like, I'm a street samurai. I am unbridled in melee combat. And then someone throws a grenade in your elevator, and you're like, what does my sword do?
It's simple. Just parry the grenade back at them.
Yeah,
no, at that point, you can turn your sword around and just seppuku.
You can street samurai your way out of the elevators.
But yeah, get iframes from the seppuku so so you dodge the explosion.
Oh god, what is it?
Hack the grenade.
It's Soul Calibur. What's the character who has like a move that is literally a seppuku attack?
Yoshimitsu.
Yoshimitsu has like
it's like I stab myself.
Does that give him iframes though, or
no?
Or does it knock him?
I think it's like a thing where if you hit somebody with it, it'll like insta kill them, but if you don't hit them with it, you just die. It's some weird mechanic like that. I think that existed at one point. Like it reminds me of Miguel's attack. That's just like a 20-second delayed punch, but if he hits you with it, you instantly get KO'd. So it's like no one's ever legitimately gonna do this.
But when someone does, it'll be hype.
Well, it's literally just like, hey dude, check this out. Okay. Yeah, don't hit me. Okay.
Put the controller down.
Okay. And then it's like, KO, I got you. And it's like, okay. It's just a quirky, cool thing.
Yeah.
And that makes me think of, I guess Guilty Gear.
Yeah.
Guilty Gear's a weird one with technology.
Blaze
and
Blue too, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of fighting games do sci-fi really weird, where the normal characters are just, we have sword. I am anime protagonist with sword, and then it's just, you go to, I'm a fucking android with missiles and rockets and a gun and...
energy swords and mines.
And then you go to another character and it's like, I play guitar.
Or Chip, just, I'm an actual ninja.
I'm an actual ninja. Also, apparently the president. And then you move over to another character that's like, I'm a surgeon. I use my surgeon weapons. And then you move back to another character that's just, I have guns.
I'm Tim.
I have guns.
I have a 9-to-5 job.
I have a 9-to-5 job.
And why am I here?
Hey guys, we decided that our next DLC character is going to be Lewis from Left 4 Dead.
He's always confused and constantly in your crosshairs, even if he's on your team. Especially if he's on your team.
That's his purpose.
Friendly fire.
His purpose for being. Yeah, another game I was thinking of with the whole lost technology and exploring a universe that's obviously been pretty much at this point abandoned. or not abandoned, like, not a universe that's abandoned, but like, you know, a world that's been abandoned. Is Habbo's like that too. That was the whole point of that. But that was like a more of a clockwork world, which, I mean, it is science fiction, but that's a really cool element to like explore things that existed and like a history and all that kind of lore. But I also really like to see not such a straight line between. I don't like the "are we the baddies" thing of like bad guy, good guy, only two side. I like to see a lot of different like elements brought in where there's a lot of different perspectives and a lot of different factions and stuff like that, where you kind of have to think about stuff, and that was seemingly more relevant in like Knights of the Old Republic. Knights of the Old Republic didn't always seem like there was necessarily just like this good, this bad, and sometimes you're playing through the game and you're like, well, I would actually literally think that this is a good choice, but apparently it's a dark side choice.
Yeah.
As opposed to like more modern stuff, like especially Mass Effect, where Mass Effect was just like, you can do Renegade or Paragon, and Renegade was almost always exclusively just, humanity is best race, fuck everyone else. Also, I'm a fucking dickhead, get out of my way. And that was like what Renegade was. And then Paragon was always the like more agreeable one, where you didn't really feel like your choices hinged on anything other than I'm a dickhead or me good guy. So, which is weird because that should be more relevant in a Star Wars game where you have the literal dark and light side, but...
Yeah. Sort of going back to what you were saying earlier, what my favorite thing about sci-fi settings, again going back to like Metroid because it's, you know, one of the best examples of exploration. I love exploring like a completely foreign like landscape that requires you to like learn its rules and how to navigate within it and experience the like combat sort of situations that you need to in those sorts of cases, and also just to get through the terrain because they're obviously different. Like I love the first area of Metroid Prime 1 where it's just kind of like lush jungle that contrasts from the crashed space station that was the beginning of the game. But even within this jungle, there's a lot of like, you see the technology of the like floating platforms, like the platforms float in that game because there's actually like a rocket thruster underneath it, keeping it suspended. And then there's like a half pipe just built into like the side of a wall that you recognize once you get the boost ball, like, oh, that's what I need to get up. I just love sci-fi games for their like exploration elements. And again, in Metroid, that was one of the first games that got me into like my love for game backstory, where you could scan everything and pick up the history of the society that was there. Like when you get into the Chozo ruins and you learn not even just the personal backstory, because the Chozo were the people who raised Samus, and you get to learn that story from reading their entries, but also just how they lived their life. Like each of the rooms had their own names that even though you couldn't tell this was a place of worship, you knew that like, oh, this was their like main chamber where they worship the sun and stuff like that.
Yeah, there are some very contained sci-fi games where like really you're kind of kept within a small little bubble of the world and you have no fucking idea what else is going on for the rest of it. One game that I've been playing recently that I really enjoy from that is Deep Rock Galactic. You're just a bunch of dwarves that work for a mining company that goes to this planet and mines resources, and there's bugs that attack you. And that's most of the lore. Like, that's really all you know, is that you do that, and occasionally there's references to, like, for Carl, and, like, stuff like that. But beyond that, it's its own little contained universe with not a ton of lore, because it's a co-op game. It's designed to just be this simple gameplay loop. It's not trying to justify why it's happening too much. I'm trying to think of other games that are, like, very contained, just small little things. Portal would be kind of like that if it weren't for the fact that it takes place in the Half-Life universe. Yeah. So you have a greater universe to actually look at and see where this is going on. It's still pretty
independent, though. The other universe just sort of exists for, like, flavor rather than, like, actual gameplay importance. An important thing about sci-fi, too, is you can also do the opposite of the self-contained world, which is you have an excuse to explore other worlds because they often have a spacefaring element to them.
Yeah.
And that's sort of cool because, yes, it's good to have one self-contained world with a lot of disparate parts. Like the first Metroid Prime game does that with like 5 vastly different environments. But then Metroid Prime 3 has a bit of a spacefaring element where you need to check out what happens on 4 different planets, and they're all very different societies, different ways you traverse them just mechanically. And that's something you can't really do in most, especially like fantasy sort of things where you can't really go to another planet, really. You can go to like another world, like dimension sort of thing.
Yeah.
But you most often see it in sci-fi, mostly because they have such a spacefaring element. So
yeah,
often.
and it's very, very common inside of a lot of sci-fi games to just have planets be like biomes.
Yeah.
Where essentially you go to a planet and it's like, the whole planet is jungle, the whole planet is Arctic, the whole planet's volcanic, and the entire planet is one environment.
Yeah.
Which is easier to design that, because it's like, well, you're only going to go to one area on the planet probably, so like, the rest of the planet doesn't matter, so it's going to be like
easy to justify narratively too. Like, say this one planet is very close to the sun. Of course, a lot of it's going to be scorched, and
especially
like
with technology improvements and stuff in spacesuits and kind of thing. It's like, okay, well, you could survive on the planet because of this. And then I always like seeing alien species that are created where it's like, oh yeah, well, we can survive on a volcanic planet because this.
Yeah.
We can survive on an Arctic planet because this. So, and I like to see species that like come from environments that are very much like, you know, hostile towards humanity, but they can survive on it because of how they're developed.
I don't remember what they're called, like the actual species name, but the aliens or the species from Lost Planet is a good...
that's acrids.
Yeah, because you were talking about the biomes and stuff, and like in Lost Planet 3, I believe, you're in the desert, you're in the jungle, you're in the, you know, you're all over the place, and it's the entire planet has all these different biomes that you get to travel to. And no, it might have been 2, but yeah, there's just all kinds of aliens that they can survive everywhere. Meanwhile, you're like, oh, it's too cold. I need to get back to this little heat warmer thing. I'm gonna die. These monsters are just like, yeah, we'll be here.
Yeah, well, I mean, Lost Planet 1 was entirely in the Arctic planet, and then 2 was like this weird thing where suddenly the planet was like no longer entirely Arctic, and there was all these like different biomes that you went to and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So that was interesting. All right, well, I think it's about time for us to wrap everything up. So we appreciate having you on, August.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, and it's always nice to see you, Ollie.
Nice to see you too, Shane.
And I enjoy talking about science fiction settings and such. So I hope that everybody who's listening has a wonderful evening, and farewell.